everybody. Welcome to the second NCDO Leadership Conclave. First, very warm welcome, Mike, Mook, Jason. Can you hear me okay, guys?
We can hear you.
Thank you. And very warm welcome to our friends who have joined from all over the world. It's rather late for some parts of the world in India. I appreciate you guys joining. So this is our second roundtable discussion that we are having. We are going through really unusual times. This is for most of us. This is the most, this is the most unusual times that we have probably seen in our careers. We often talk about a VUCA world. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and these times certainly are a VUCA world. And it makes decision making, it makes strategy difficult. But at the same time, this is also an opportunity to leapfrog. And that's really what we have been trying to explore with this series of leadership roundtables, that how do you use this situation that we are in, the VUCA situation that we are in, to actually advance our business, advance the work we are doing with our clients. And today our focus is on wealth management and how what digital transformation means for wealth management, what is happening, what can be done. Now, this is very interesting. I've spent large part of my career in wealth management, and digital and technology-led transformation has been a theme in the wealth management and asset management industry for a long time. But perhaps it's fair to say that the progress has been somewhat slower than the promise of digital and technology-led business transformation in this industry. So, and the question now is that this disruptive change that is happening because of COVID, will that really make a change? Is that something which is, how is that going to change things as far as digital journey for companies in this industry is concerned? That's what we're going to explore today. And to do that, we have three outstanding CIOs with us today. Mike Ragunas from Cetera Financial, Mook Mehta from AssetMark, and Jason Robert from Cambridge Associates. All very, very accomplished. Mike has spent a lot of his career in e-commerce before he moved to financial services 10 years back, and has been with Cetera Financial for the last 3 years. Mook has spent all of his career in financial services, in technology, and has been in the fintech space throughout, has been with AssetMark for the last 2.5, 3 years. Jason started his, large part of his career was as a consultant with Sapient, and has been with Cambridge for the last 6 years. Interestingly, he's the first CTO that Cambridge has had, which also, says a lot. So again, welcome to the three of you. Delighted to have all of you here. Now, in terms of the plan for this discussion, I would first like to invite each one of you to make some opening comments. Talk a little bit about your company, just a few words about what is the business, because wealth management, asset management industry has, there are different parts of the value chain, there are different type of players, so it's not one size fit all. So just a little bit of that explanation. What does technology really mean for you? Just the top 1 or 2 priorities for your firms, and then finally, what has COVID meant for you? Which is the biggest shift, the single biggest shift that COVID has meant. So we'll start with a set of opening comments, and then we'll kind of build on the discussion. And audience, please keep your questions coming. We will try to take them on a real-time basis. So without further ado, perhaps Mike, to start with you, your opening comments, please.
Great. Well, thank you, Nitin, and it's definitely a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to join this group and to our audience here today. As you said, I'm Mike Ragunas. I am the CIO at Cetera Financial Group. For those of you who didn't recognize me from the opening video, I have been working on my COVID beard here and my COVID hair. So I know to any of you who know me before, I may look a little bit different now. To tell you a little bit about Cetera, you may have not heard of us. We're more of an industry brand than a consumer brand. We're a leading financial advice firm. So we focus on financial advisors. We're headquartered in El Segundo, California. And we have about 8,000 financial professionals that work with us across the United States. And we have roughly $260 billion in client assets under administration. So, all told, we're one of the largest networks of independently managed broker dealers. So we're in the independent broker dealer space. That's how we fit into the wealth management world. So our advisors all operate under their own brands, and then we as a firm provide supporting services for them in the background. Some of our key priorities, first and foremost, we've been working for the last several years on delivering what we call our advice-centric experience. This is something that's really a Cetera proprietary integration of a variety of different industry-leading technologies into a common platform that we're offering across our different broker dealers. We really believe overall the future of wealth management is providing holistic financial advice. So, not just thinking about portfolios or thinking about individual transactions, but really working with the client on their needs, on what their goals are, and really developing an end-to-end plan that can help them manage all their financial needs over the course of their lifetime. The platform that we're building is called AdviceWorks. We came out with our first release of that about 2 years ago. And so far, we're now on our 6th major release that's just come out. So we're continuing to really invest heavily and push hard on bringing that platform out and creating that end-to-end advice-centric experience. So that's really our number one goal from a technology perspective. The other key thing we're focusing on is digitization of our core operations. So really, how do we get as much of our processing to be online and straight through and fully, call it virtualized overall. Last year we introduced a new online account opening process that we've been continuing to evolve here over the course of this year. We've also been automating a lot of our advisor servicing functions, again, to get them to be more online, more accessible, faster, and with fewer errors. And overall, this has really been very helpful. It was frankly timely that we got our new process out there last year, because as we've come into this COVID period, it's been a real boon to our advisors to have a full online process with e-signature and other things they can do with their clients. Biggest change for us due to COVID, I'd say number one for us internally, it's been going to essentially an entirely work from home structure for our Cetera workforce. So we've been over 90% work from home since March. We've continued to be in that mode. We're really finding that it's worked very well for us. We've been able to maintain and in some cases even increase our productivity in this model. So I think that's going to be a new way for us to think about how we operate going forward. And I know many companies are in that same mode. For our advisors, many of them have gone back into their offices. They're small businesses. They're able to manage their social distancing in their offices. But they've definitely had to adapt to the way their clients want to work with them. So a lot fewer in-person meetings, more virtual meetings, more online operations, as we've talked about, using technology, which is where our tech platforms are really come into play. And then one thing we have done, which has been really appreciated, is we've negotiated a Zoom discount for our advisors. So many of them have switched over to Zoom for a lot of their meetings, and so that's definitely been very popular for us this year. So those are my opening comments, Nitin.
Thanks so much, Mike. Advisor-centric experience, digitization of processes, remote working, all very, very key themes. And as we go on in this discussion, we'll come back to those. Thank you so much. Mook, over to you. Mook, you're on mute.
This is the problem.
It's really rare for you.
I'd say hello, everyone. Thanks, Nitin. Like Mike, I'm working on my COVID hair as well. It's not growing in quite as fast, but the one thing you're going to find is, I think, through across all of us, you're going to find there's a common set of themes, common set of challenges, even though we all have a slightly different space in the industry. So I'm at AssetMark. I'm the CIO of AssetMark, and AssetMark is the second largest TAMP, so turnkey asset manager in the industry. We have about $65 billion, give or take, under management right now. And really the function of a TAMP is it's really outsourcing the CIO, the chief investment officer function for advisors, right? So advisors basically outsource that function to firms like ours, and we basically support them in their ability to allocate client assets and investments. And similar to most of the firms here, we serve independent advisors, or and who for the most part serve individuals and families, sometimes in a high net worth space. For the broader context, what you'll see is there's a constant blurring of the lines. So, we're a temp, Mike's at a BD, Jason's a BD. You're going to find that wealth management is actually starting to overlap in lots of places. Every firm does a little bit of overlap work. And that's part of our challenges actually that we face, right? So how do you continue to differentiate and continue to maintain a focus on your core value, while at the same time being able to compete and also cooperate with firms where advisors are common clients, for example. The key priorities we have for this year are similar to others, right? So we've been on a data transformation and data strategy for several years now. True believer, and I'm sure most firms are at this point, that data is the core of our future. We know that getting control of our data in this complex industry really drives our future and really drives our ability to execute and implement new functionality and capabilities for our clients as fast as possible. So control of data and leveraging what really is transformational tools in the industry that allow us to manipulate, manage data has been really a core driver of our strategy. Next, in a little bit of an outdated term, but really the omni-channel experience, a little bit of what Mike talked about as well, right? Which is the integration of what our advisor experience is with the operational and service model that we have. We pride ourselves on a very high-end service model, but a high-end service model does come at a cost, right? And it's a cost of not just our own operation service professionals, but also making sure that integration and allowing advisors to get information and transactional capabilities when they need it, as fast as they need it, has a win-win kind of opportunity for us all. And so that experience, allowing that experience, whether you call our service desk or operations team, go through our portal, pick up a mobile application, any way you touch us, we want to make that experience similar, but also as seamless as possible. And so that's really where we drive our technology integration at the moment. What COVID's really changed for us, other than this is my second time wearing a button-up shirt, so I will tell you that in the last 4 months. So, but aside from that, the COVID is a challenge, right, for the organization. We effectively overnight went completely remote. We're 100% remote at this point. And not just remote for ourselves, but also with our key partners, right? So including Incedo and others that we work with. That was a challenge, right? We had to make sure that, we maintained our level of regulatory and security compliance, but make sure that we allowed that capability and safety factor for ourselves and also our key partners. And that was that took some work up front, but it was very effective. And I think we've come to a good place. We do believe that there's a level of, shift in work that's happened across the country like everybody else does. And a need for a home office, is different than it used to be. But we also believe that there's a need for tight collaboration, which we haven't quite solved. And I think the industry's, everyone in every company is trying to solve, not just our industry. So that's all I have as opening. So thanks.
Thanks, Mark. And as you mentioned that a lot of common themes to what Mike also shared. But I think the two things that stood out for me, your comment about how the roles in the wealth management value chain, they are evolving and they're also overlapping. I think it's a very interesting theme, which we should explore more, and also the central role of data. I think that's a very, very powerful opportunity. So certainly topics for us to discuss more. Jason, over to you. And Cambridge is at a slightly different place in the entire asset management, wealth management, value chain than Cetera and AssetMark. And I know that you guys are also going through quite a significant transformation of your business model. So really look forward to your comments.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Nitin. Thanks for the invitation. There will be a lot of common things, and I feel compelled to talk about my hair because I'm the last one to go and the only one that hasn't. Yes, I cut it myself. You probably guessed that. I'm hoping it's not as obvious as it appears to me that it is, but keeps getting better every time I try. So you should have seen the first attempt. So Cambridge, you may or may not know of, we are nearly 50 years old as a firm. We're privately owned. We are an institutional investment firm, but we have our roots in research and advice. And Nitin had mentioned that we're going through a pretty big transformation. And I would say largely over the last 5 to 10 years, that's been extraordinarily true. And I'm going to tie that back to themes that are very aligned with Mike and with Mook as well. And the transformation for us is moving from being purely an advisor and a research provider to a discretionary manager. And that's a profound change. Everything that we do is different. And the operations, the requirements on data, the regulations, as we all know, are far more onerous when you're actually taking a fiduciary role and you're making decisions on the behalf of others. So this was why Cambridge, in recognizing the moment and looked to change the way technology was managed and actually hire and create the role of a chief technologist. So yeah, that's where I walk into it. Our clients are endowments, foundations, pensions. We do some work with private clients, institutional sized families, corporate clients, government entities. And we retain our clients at a pretty remarkable rate. So as you can imagine, we're nearly 50 years old as a firm. We retain our clients. We have a cross section of services that we provide, ranging from clients that have been with us quite literally from day one, all the way to those that know us only as their discretionary manager. We have the added complexity too, where we don't manage funds. Most of what we do are we allocate our clients' portfolios into specific asset managers, generally private managers. That's where we have our specialty. We view that as a differentiator and that keeps us independent. It's also massively complicated in terms of thinking about the operations, right? Investment firms tend to scale by having really tightly managed funds that are commingled. But for us, every client means at least one structured fund, whether it's a separate account or an actual single investor fund. So that creates an additional complexity. If you take the beginning of my statement where we were in a business before where we were really dispensing advice and really didn't have any kind of audit or regulatory obligation, and we weren't moving money, all the way to not only are we doing those things, but we're doing it in a way that just inherently does not scale. So for us, the big challenge really, and I'll go to and really be aligned with Mook on this, data is our biggest thing right now. Everything that I just mentioned in terms of the way the business is changing and the fact that most of what we do are investing in private managers. So you don't just buy that data from Bloomberg. It doesn't necessarily come in a file. And you have relationships that provide data at certain degrees of transparency and others that provide it at different degrees with different taxonomies. So we're trying to make sense of all of this. We've made a lot of great progress. We feel really proud of where we are. But all of this is in the interest of being accurate. And then to our second, what I would say biggest priority is to make our investment teams as efficient as they possibly can be. Efficient, consistent, and then driving the types of performance that our clients expect. And in order to do that, the data needs to be well understood, well managed, consistent, and we need to put analytical frameworks and tools in place for our client teams that are consistent and effective and meet their individual needs. As I mentioned, we have clients that have been with us for a really long time. And when you hire an advisor and you hire a consultant, if you will, you're paying for them to be creative and you're paying for them to be innovative and you're paying for them to meet you where you are. When you hire an investor, you want them to beat a benchmark. So if you bring those two things together, we walk into this investment management position with an awful lot of historic customization in terms of how clients expect us to look at their portfolios and how they'd like us to report on it. That customization is really the enemy of efficiency, especially the types of customization that aren't just cosmetic. So we try to make sure that we find the right balance between those two. So those are priorities 1 and 1, if you will, because they're so interrelated, but making the investment teams efficient so they can deliver returns and meet our obligation to regulators and to our clients. And then, all with the underpinning of having a solid data strategy. Moving on to COVID, for us, it's been really a lot more seamless operationally than we probably would have ever feared. The hardest thing that we're dealing with now is just closing new business in the pipeline. We have a very high touch business, very long standing relationships. They don't sort of start and end with a cold call or a random email. I mean, these things take a lot of time. There's a lot of in-person discussion, and that's obviously evolving to be more remote. But the process for closing business has been different, to say the least, and it's taken longer. It's been harder to predict. But also just on the positive side, the opportunity to change the way we think about the office and provide a more flexible work arrangement for people. We've never really had much of an experience doing remote work. We've always sort of valued the in-person. But this is really changing all of that. And we're looking at our leases and we're looking at how we've designed our offices and thinking, hey, this could be very different. We could go to a model where we do our interacting in the office, but we do our heads down work at home. And we find ways to make that logistically predictable. And that'll help us all really sustain. So I do think that the net effect of COVID on the way we work as a team is going to be actually really quite positive in terms of, sustainability, cutting back on travel where, in hindsight, it was probably unnecessary. And all of those patterns where we were kind of, I guess I would say it's misplaced hustle, like putting a lot of work into things that weren't necessarily returning. That's, having us look at it through a different light. So I think we come out much stronger, to be honest.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks so much. And I've noted, this, phrase you use, misplaced hustle. I think all of us are victim of it, and it's very true that COVID has shown us that there is a very different way of working. Which all three of you have made the point. Which is very very feasible. And I can see a question around that, and we'll come back to it. Just on Q&A. So friends, there is if you look at the bottom right hand side of your screens, there is a Q&A kind of box. So keep your questions coming as we have this kind of open discussion in this panel. We'll keep on looking at your question and trying to address them. So just to kind of get things, get the discussion going. So as we think about change, the center of it, of course, has to be the customer. So I'd love to hear comments from each one of you on that. Your customer, and it's slightly different. It's advisor, financial planners for Mike and Mook, and more institutions for you, Jason. That how are the expectations from your customers changing?
Well, I can jump in first. I think what you're seeing more than anything right now is, the shift from a very high touch industry, right, where advisors had individuals in their offices to sorry for the new puppy in the background.
New normal look.
Yeah, welcome to COVID. So, everything from a high touch, shift from a high touch industry, right, to where advisors now need to be able to leverage, online collaboration and Zoom. And what we've seen is just a new wave of interest by advisors and our partner firms, whether they're fund companies, product manufacturers, broker dealers, on straight through processing, right? So it was a challenge in the past where straight through processing was not fully adopted or accepted, or was kind of a lower priority. But it's being forced now, right? It's being forced that online documents, online transactions, online account opening, e-signature, all of those things, which we've been supportive, and many of us have been trying to push for adoption for many years, is now being asked for, and asked, quite frankly, they're asking us to rush the implementations to get them in as fast as possible. And that's a huge shift, right? And it's a good one, in my opinion, for the industry that was forced by COVID. That just pushes the kind of digitization and the adoption of it very effectively. So,
yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think that certainly what we're seeing from our advisors is the same thing that Mook's talking about, which is really a pull toward more technology, particularly for collaboration. I know we had one of our advisors who talked about how they were able to use our online financial planning and document sharing capability along with Zoom to have conversations with all their clients right when the markets were in turmoil early in this COVID process. And that advisor came out feeling like they're really able to have much better quality conversations with their clients, and actually get referrals from those clients for other people whose advisors weren't able to do that same sort of technology supported process. So I think to Mook's point, it's much different than the kind of the historical in-person process, right? That having the tools to support high quality conversations virtually is really making a difference for a lot of our advisors.
I can add on to to be consistent with the themes. I wouldn't necessarily say that expectations have changed. I just think that fears have been managed. And I think the fear is that, especially in the beginning, if you remember just how volatile the markets were, and by volatile, I mean dropping, the fear is that it would be harder to be served by our team remotely. It would be harder to get time with the staff that they're working with directly on their portfolios, and it would be hard to access the information. And those things actually have been managed. They didn't prove to hit nearly as hard as I think you may fear when you come into work one day realizing that you're going to be gone indefinitely and you don't know how you're going to do all of the things that you're used to doing and used to relying on being in person. So I don't think it's been a change in expectation. I think that our clients and my colleagues have learned a lot about how to use technology that they used to rely on others to use for them. And I think that's ultimately going to be additive, as well as new technology might be easier to put in the hands of a broader user base. But I think expectations are as high as they've ever been. I just think it's been a really pleasant surprise, if you will, that we're able to manage this way.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. And I think that's been, if you look at where we are, 6 months into COVID, while the social and the health implications are really so significant and scary. But from a business perspective, it's, I think, fair to say that most businesses have been able to ride through this much better than what we might have feared 4 or 5 months back. I think that's absolutely the case. Just picking on a couple of themes, some very interesting themes raised. So Mook, when you talked about the changing expectations, you talked about a lot more online, and you also talked about straight through processing, and kind of that brings this question about operations. It's not when you think about technology and digital transformation, one of the very big aspects of this is operations transformation. Because it's digital is not just what you do at the front end, it's kind of across your operating model. And in operations, there has been kind of this big debate for a while that do you fix specific problems with automation and kind of very point of use solutions, or you kind of do the big kind of program, and then the question is that how do you really do that? It comes to that classical issue around how do you change the wheels of a flying aircraft. So I'd be interested in perspectives around the whole operations transformation piece. How are you guys thinking about it, and if COVID is changing your perspectives on how you're thinking about operations transformation?
I mean, I can go for. Sorry, Mook, if you'd rather.
Sure.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, because I think given the change that we're going through at Cambridge, it really begins with an operational change, and technology enables that. I'm seeing a question too in the questions about cybersecurity and how that is affected by the operational switch. So I'll address that quickly as well. But yeah, the way we serve our firm has changed, and I'll admit, in the beginning of my tenure at Cambridge, we were attempting to get technology out ahead a little bit, building tools that are designed around a particular way. And I'll just use the investment life cycle as the obvious example, where you have a classical trade submission through a modeling tool into a trading workflow, and then ultimately into the back office functions. But as an advisor, everything I just said is relatively irrelevant and foreign, right? So as advisors, it all kind of bundles together, where you have a client service team and you don't really separate, and you're not even really truly transacting. You're just helping clients facilitate their own investment process. So, we were building technology in the beginning that assumed a certain operational structure and a set of controls. As we were adapting and evolving and changing the operating model. And those things going on in parallel was really challenging. It continues to be, although most of it is kind of behind, you know, in a rearview mirror at this point. So that's, I guess that would be my quick comment there. And from a security perspective, because that was one of the questions that came up in the panel, yeah, it's been I think it's more the visibility than the expectation. I mean, I think every firm, any firm handling any sensitive information of any kind, whether you're investing or not, should have a really high bar for information security. But when you're handling accounts and you're moving money and you have really sensitive information and you're being watched by all kinds of different regulatory bodies around the world, then it's just what you do is much more visible. And you know, you can't rationalize your way into putting things off that you know you shouldn't be putting off, right? So that's you know, and then the question said, I don't know if this was directed to me or to us all, but what have the reactions of the industry and the regulatory bodies been to how we're handling it? I can't speak for them other than to say, whenever we're audited, and that is frequently, and sometimes it's a surprise and sometimes it's planned, the audits all go very well. I mean, I can say with pride that, you know, Cambridge has a very long history of a very high integrity operation. And we take the regulations very seriously, and I think it shows. But I'm certainly not in a position to speak for any of these bodies, but my experience of it has been that it's all gone well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, for the operation kind of a fundamental shift in how you think about it. You know, for us, I'm a true believer that, especially for firms like many of ours that have grown organically, effectively, right? So our SMR's, you know, about 30 years old. We've been growing, I would say, at a good pace and in a very dramatic pace in the last 4 or 5 years. But what ends up happening, as many of us face, is a series of legacy platforms that unfortunately drive operational inefficiency around it, right, over time, right? So platforms then lead to operational workarounds, and operational workarounds become part of your embedded operational process. Then you put controls around, and you know, you have an opportunity to go back and rethink your entire process, and that's hard, right? And so usually what you see and is that, you know, you can't get wheels on the plane, like you said, right? Basically, you end up taking a component of the workflow and fixing it and kind of keep improving. And each one has great value. And that's a way to continue to support growth in the business while managing your investments on cleanup and operational improvement, as well as capabilities and product, right? Which is great. Sometimes you have the opportunity, and, you know, for us, we're in that mode right now, where we're actually doing a major transformation of our operational process. So we have the opportunity to replace our entire back office custodial platform. And with that replacement, we have a whole new, you know, it's almost a step function. So as we looked at all of our operational processes, looked at what our new target operating model should look like, we went back, and now we have a new platform to target it against. We were able to clean up, you know, decades of operational inefficiency. And that's just an opportunity that happens to be in front of us. Now that comes with its own set of pain, right? It's like taking the guts out of the company, right? At the same time, but at least we have the opportunity to get the value on the other side of that. So, you know, I think that's a constant balancing act for most CIOs in this industry, especially those that, you know, have legacy platforms that they deal with and that the firm's grown around, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just reality.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think that, you know, in our world, we certainly have a number of legacy platforms, right? We've been built by acquisition of a number of different other BDs. And so we're, you know, a lot of what we've been doing is what Mook's described, which is working on building out a common set of platforms. So I think the real challenge is, how do you simplify the environment, even as, you know, technology is adding more and more capabilities, and you could argue is more complex. You know, for us, that a lot of that is, how do we take the best thinking and the best capabilities that we have, bring them to everybody through a common set of processes, but also rethink what we're doing to take advantage of what technology can do for you today. You know, we're really focusing on starting with the highest volume operational things that we do and getting them really automated well. And, you know, making some decisions about things that are maybe lower volume that don't require that same level of automation, and allow you to have some flexibility around how you manage your focus around getting the best operational effectiveness for the investments that we're making.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Moving to another theme, and Mike, in your comments, around advisor experience and expectation, how that is changing, you talked about tools. And that kind of brings to this whole theme around AI and machine learning. For the last 5-10 years, that has been a big theme in the industry. That how AI ML can change the entire engagement interaction process. So, any things that you would like to share on how you guys are thinking about leveraging AI and machine learning in terms of changing the entire advisor engagement?
Yeah, I think that the one that you mentioned, and I think for us is top of mind, is this idea of the robo advisor, and I think it's been out there for a number of years. I think we've seen as that whole space evolving, where robo in our minds is a really appropriate solution, and what we call digital advice for smaller investors. For people who are getting started, smaller portfolios, it's really a great way to get those investors into the market. We actually introduced our digital advice platform last year, which we call InvestPath. It's really focused for us more on our bank channel, where banks tend to have newer investors, smaller investors that want to get into the process, since they're able to use this robo platform to do that. But what we're also finding, I think the whole industry is finding, is that as those investors get more assets, they get more sophisticated, they start to want to talk to an advisor. And so there's a natural progression of those investors getting into more of an advisor supported model. And so to us, we see it as an opportunity to get engaged with those smaller investors in a way that's relatively low cost for the advisor, but gives them the ability to bring in sometimes the children of their clients or other folks that they can start to move along the path. So for us, we see it as being very complementary to the business, but it's something that we see as being important in our platform as we move forward.
And there's a question here from Sairam Vedam, which is, are you seeing the advent of conversational AI and virtual assistants in your industry? So any thoughts, Mike, Mok, you guys are beginning to see that?
Yeah, for us, the place that we're starting, right, and this sits on top of our data strategy, quite frankly, right? So the place that we've started and leveraged advanced tooling is in our sales process, right? The first place we decided that it was a great way to understand a deeper view of our client is to see if we can empower our sales team, everything from using advanced tools to understand lead generation, to build learning models, right, that allow us to continue to evaluate our process and the factors that really impact great leads. And so that's really become a great opportunity for us, and we've really started there. But I think the future is still ahead, right? Where as firms like ours get better control of data, we're going to end up being able to leverage that data and really leverage it on behalf of our advisors, but give them the tooling to think about their client base in a whole different way. I think we're still a few years away, right? I think, it's like robo advice. Clearly there's a place for it, right? There's companies that have made lots of inroad, whether it's Vanguard or Schwab, on kind of a digitized experience that allows individual investors to invest, and advisors can definitely use it to scale, right? For us in this industry, we've mostly allowed that scale to be advisor assisted, right? It's a way to allow advisors to bring on the next generation of assets, but without spending as much time with them directly, right? To make it more affordable for the individuals as well. And so I do think that's all going to evolve as data gets more powerful and tools get more powerful. And we're just on the verge of it. I would say my gut feel is next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see some great opportunities coming out of this.
Yeah, and just to quickly comment on the AI customer service, right? I think in our world, our advisors are expect and deserve more of a high touch approach. I think probably similar to Mook, right? We're dealing with a relatively small number of clients who are our advisors that are high producers in our world, right? So they generate a lot of revenue for us. We're there to support them, and so our model is more of a personal high touch. And I think for the advisors, same thing, that they see their clients as relatively small number of clients. They really want that opportunity to touch them personally, and so I think we've seen less of a pull for automated support in that way, because really we want the opportunity to talk to our advisors, and our advisors want the opportunity to talk to their clients for service.
Excellent. So really the final question from my side, there's some excellent questions coming on the audience box here. And Jason, it's to you, and continuing with the AI ML theme. Now, your kind of end of the value chain, and as you think about investment decisions, and again, that's been like a topic for the last many years, that you see AI machine learning beginning to play a relevant role in terms of investment decision making?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess for us, it hasn't really entered into the decision-making space much, but I'll come back to that. But where it's more relevant to us today, and it's a really light application, admittedly, but we get data in about our client investments in all kinds of different formats. Sometimes it's structured, more often than not, it isn't. And dating myself a little bit, we used to think about screen scraping or coordinate-based technology that would pull information off of an unstructured thing. If you knew exactly where it was and it never moved, then it might be right. But we've been able to use some machine learning to have algorithms that understand different managers' terminology, where they generally place things like net asset value and other information that we extract from their documents, to make the process a lot more scalable, because it takes an awful long time, as I know Nitin, with Encito, and helping us where we can automate. The process of pulling the information in is time consuming, and it's error prone. So the technology and the AI application has really been most impactful there, where we've increased the amount of information we bring in, not just in terms of the number of managers and the number of different sources, but also the data that we're extracting from the files that we get is a much larger set. And we're doing it with a reduced staffing level. So that's been a really positive effect. Accuracy is better. It's kind of really winning in every way that you would look at, wanting that type of a project to succeed. On the decision-making front, I mean, it's more just, frankly, access to all of this data, and then quants that can write clever algorithms to figure out what's really truly going on behind a manager's performance, and how far are they tracking from their mandate, and what constitutes a trend. And I wouldn't necessarily call that machine learning at this point, because certainly it's not. They're just doing some kind of clever scripting. But you can see over time where we would start to train machines to look for things that our quant analysts are looking for, as patterns in data. But getting back to the theme before, just getting our data structure to the point where you can teach a human, let alone a machine, to kind of figure out how to make correlations. That's one thing that has to continue to evolve in advance of machine learning really playing a big role.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. We'll get to the questions here. A lot of interesting questions. So I'll start with my colleague Amal Bhatt's question, which is, how do you see fintechs combined with COVID-19 impacting high-touch services that are traditionally provided to advisors? And I guess the nub of the question is that in a post-COVID world, how would you differentiate with fintechs?
Well, I talked about that a little bit earlier. I think high touch can take different meanings. Again, for us, and I think it's a bit of what Jason was talking about, is getting the right information in the hands of our support teams, getting them in the hands of our operations teams, making sure that we're providing the right efficiencies in the process, but that the high touch part doesn't necessarily have to mean an in-person touch. It can be over the phone. It can be by Zoom, right? There are different ways you can touch an advisor, or an advisor can touch their client. I think where the technology can help and where fintechs can help is in the supporting technology that helps you have the right information, right, make the right decisions, give the right recommendations to those advisors and clients, so that high touch experience is timely and it's accurate.
Okay. I'll keep going. It's a question from Pulkit about cloud. Did cloud emerge even more promising infrastructure option during COVID-19, like rolling out build release to environment or even setting up environment for new joiners? So what is cloud? Um, I guess cloud is relevant for all of you guys, but has COVID changed that?
For us, I don't think I would say COVID has changed anything about our strategy with cloud. We continue to drive toward more resiliency, more capacity on demand, and really partially driven by our own strategy for infrastructure, but also our partner strategies, right? So third-party tools are as everyone drives more and more tooling to the cloud, it becomes more and more efficient for the entire ecosystem to go there. And so I don't think COVID's really done much at all for us as far as strategy. It allows us to demonstrate resiliency for sure, and so that's been good. It demonstrates the capabilities, and that's helped our business.
Number of questions around COVID, right at the top. Eric Schumann has an interesting question. You all had to adjust to COVID challenges. Will you return to pre-COVID processes, or what will change post-COVID?
I don't think we'll return exactly to pre-COVID. Just speaking, for my organization, what exactly will change? Honestly, I feel like it's been a really helpful way for us to. I mentioned customization in the beginning, and how that was really the hallmark of a Cambridge service. When you were looking for advice, our goal was to be thoughtful and persuasive. And you do that in ways that are really custom to the conversation you're having. And that bleeds into, as the relationship evolves and becomes much more of a, I wouldn't call it a transactional relationship because it's not, but where what you're being paid for is easier to quantify. So the work that you're doing around, building documentation and providing different views, that becomes a little bit less at the center. And we've taken the opportunity with everybody kind of remote to have a lot of step back discussions around how do we create more efficiency and talking about client portfolios in consistent ways. I wouldn't say that that's directly because of COVID, but there's something about just shaking up the environment altogether, putting everybody kind of in their neutral corners and up on a screen where, and one specific example of that, if you've ever been in a room where you have, in my instance, say there are 10 people in a meeting, 8 of them are co-located in Boston and the other 2 are in satellite offices. You rarely hear from those satellite offices, because you have 8 people dominating the discussion. So, we've thought when you have international conversations, maybe everybody should be remote because they seem to be so much more effective.
Right.
Because everybody's on the playing field's leveled. So I feel like in some ways that, broke open a lot of conversations that might have been harder, frankly, if you had the voices that really kind of needed to be heard continued to be somewhat muffled by, what you could consider to be a geographic bias or a proximity bias. So, we're going to take our lessons from that, and I don't see us returning and to kind of the same norms with that really just as an example.
Yeah, and it also your comments, Jason, interesting. You also get to this question from BG that do we feel the situation COVID is blessing in disguise for some of the efficiency that industry has been trying to achieve for long, and will actually help in accelerating that. Mike, Mook, any comments from you guys on that?
Yeah, I think for sure, and I know Mook commented on this as well, right? What we're certainly seeing is more adoption of our technology. I think the adoption would have been slower in the past just because it's challenging to get people to change the way they do things. But I think getting to more of an online process because of COVID has definitely helped us to change more rapidly our operations than I think we otherwise would have.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that's been the biggest and fastest transformation we've seen to date.
Yeah. Question from Manit. How do you think about FANGs entering the wealth management industry and disrupting the market? So Facebook, Amazon, Google, the big kind of tech players.
Well, I think we all have to be ready to compete, right? So I mean that's just the reality, and I think there's some also reality to scale, right? So you know, coming from very large companies in my history, where at one point I led institutional technologies at Schwab for as their CIO, and they right now Schwab has $1.8 trillion in just that line of business. And so, there's clearly scale opportunities to get to a market. There's definitely technology prowess. And then they also have the benefit of potentially acquiring great fintech and building from scratch. So, yeah, we have to watch and learn, if nothing else. And I think it'll just make the industry stronger. Ultimately, the end goal is to serve clients for us. And I think it'll help us as well.
Right. And I think it also gets to the point that you have been making in this conversation, look, about data. That, because, the ticket to play for these players is really data. And but, in some ways, you have access to different type of data. You have the client data, and then, what you can, do with it. And then potentially it's also an opportunity, I would think, for collaboration, not just for competing. A very interesting question from Rithis Lok Dev. Um, as you look at transformation and digitalization and looking to unlock greater value, what is your opinion on organization redesign to make this journey more effective? And this is a question I also wanted to ask, which was about culture. Because as you think about digital transformation, the technology aspect of it is one thing, but as we know, it's a much bigger change program. So, org redesign, culture, how are you guys thinking about that?
I think.
I think.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think the comment on culture, right, is an important one, because there are other questions around, do you return to the same, practices you had pre-COVID? I think that, to me, how do you retain and maintain your culture is one of the most challenging things when you're in a remote environment, right? So I think that's something we all have to watch, is how do we continue to drive and maintain culture? How do you use in-person time to do that, right? How do you make sure that you don't drift as an organization? There's going to be I think the biggest challenges that organizations are going to have as they think about sort of the post-COVID operations. So that's what I want to comment around culture in particular.
Yeah, for me, it's faster, better, cheaper is not a theme that's gone away for any of us in lots of ways. But I do think that this new way of work will continue to inform us on and the pendulum in my eyes always swings between, like, how efficient can you get product out the door, right? Whether that's transformational digitization of the platforms or just investment product or anything. And so, I think we're going to continue to evaluate, right, how close our product delivery and technology and organizational redesign. But I don't think actually that's a new COVID-related theme. I think that's just an opportunity to allow, as a company grows, to rethink what's more efficient at that point in time for the firm's growth.
I would add just a little bit of thought. I know we're on the same question, but given how much we've changed at Cambridge and continue to, just my opinion on the value of organizational redesign is whether you end up redesigning or not is less the question. But I think that whatever we're doing, and this is so age old, but it's easy to avoid the hard work, figuring out what you're doing and why and the effect that will have on your organization, and then figuring out what's the appropriate technology to make all of that work is the right order. I think it always has been. I think it always will be. Sometimes technology is inspirational, and it leads you to ask questions about how you might change the way you're designed and how you work and how that technology might allow you to do it. And if you want to call that technology led, I would view it more as technology inspired. But I just don't think that ever goes away. I feel like there are so many innovative and really cool and flashy toys that sometimes it's easy to forget that if you bring in something that demoed really well, but your organization's not structured to use it the way it was designed, it's not going to be successful. So I think it's a great question, and I feel like maybe in that question is someone making the same point that isn't it important that we think of these things first, even though digital transformation is kind of the lingo and getting all the buzz, and I would agree with that.
Thank you. We are getting to close of time. So I'd just like to do like a closing round, and I promise you guys a bit of a surprise. So I want to do like a hot seat, like like a buzzer round. For each one of you, I'm going to ask like 5 very simple questions, and I'm expecting like a 1 or 2 word answer. Right? So rapid fire now. So who wants to go first?
I think Mook does.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
Okay, Mook, here we go.
That goes.
As you think about the next 12, 18 months, the biggest opportunity,
Managing growth,
the biggest challenge,
culture,
what you will do more of,
more direct time to overcome this collaboration challenge, a new world.
what you will do less of,
Hopefully sitting at home.
what you want to keep doing.
I want to keep engaging with our clients. I think that's also transformed.
Excellent, thank you. Jason, next to you. And I'll just shift the order a little bit. So as you think about the next 12, 18 months, what you want to do more of.
What I want to do more of in the next 18 months? Was that the question?
Next 12, 18 months, yes.
Oh, I guess, ironically, given everything I've said, I'd like to do a little bit more face-to-face interaction. Not every day, but some,
What do you want to do less of?
Cutting my own hair.
I think that's true for most of us. What do you want to keep doing?
What are my teams doing?
What do you want to keep doing?
Oh, keep doing. I guess keep challenging assumptions that we've made pre-COVID.
What's the biggest opportunity?
To redefine how we work and make it more sustainable.
What's the biggest challenge?
Not losing our culture and our human connections in the process.
Excellent, thank you. Mike, over to you. The biggest challenge for you?
Yeah, I think it's similar, right? Just maintaining the connections, maintaining culture, maintaining momentum here as we continue forward.
Biggest opportunity for you?
It's to really get to our finish line around our advice-centric experience. I think that's really critical for us strategically.
What you will do more of?
I'd like to do more of traveling, not as much as I did before, but more than I'm doing now, right, to actually connect with folks.
What do you want to do less of?
Yeah, less of sitting in this chair on Zooms, that's for sure.
And what do you want to keep doing?
I want to keep engaging in the way that we're engaging. I think, Jason made the point, and I'll do more than 2 words, but this idea that you can be more all on the same page, right? When you're together in these kind of virtual forums, it's definitely a different way to engage, and I think it's been a big learning that it really helps everyone to have a voice in everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Just a quick wrap up from me of some of the key insights, messages that I took away. I think the first is just how well this industry and the various players have coped with the whole COVID challenge. I think that's something which has really come through. I think the second theme is that in terms of digital transformation, I didn't really hear that there was a revolution or something new and dramatic that COVID sparked, but it definitely gave a kind of a nice push. It kind of accelerated some of the themes. I think one of the very key theme that we talked about was how the advisor expectations are moving to more high touch, more online, and that is kind of then having a lot of ripple effect, whether it is in terms of operations, that how do you really now transform, step up your operations, for a more real-time world. It has implications for AI, machine learning, robo-advisors, themes that have been talked about for quite some time. It is accelerating, pushing that journey. And then interestingly, when you think about that, the big question that is really coming is around data. Because AI and machine learning, you can't do it in abstraction. You need the right quantity and quality of data to do that. And that is, I think all the CIOs here talked about that, how that is such an important priority. So we can talk a lot more, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So Mike, Mook, Jason, thank you for such an excellent discussion, and for all of our participants for your for being here and for all the interesting questions. We learned a lot from those questions. So thank you, everybody, and stay healthy, stay safe. Thanks so much.